Well, I am so glad you all have tuned back in for another episode of the Echo Stop Live podcast. I'm Kevin here with my good friend Kurt.
What's up, man?
What is going on? We are sitting amidst a hazardous construction zone here.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
But like all things that are in the process of work, so is the health of our community. And so we brought in somebody that has already been having an amazing conversation with us. And all I intend to do this morning, and I'm so glad you tuned in, is just to continue that conversation and hope that our viewers are half as inspired as I am and twice as motivated to go out and do something with this conversation, because otherwise we're just talking, right?
Absolutely, man. We've had a great conversation so far, which we were already recording, and I think we probably were, right? But anyway.
We might be, but hey, we got a guest.
Yes, we do.
We are in the presence of greatness. One of the best lieutenants on the department is sitting here with us, right? Yeah. We voted earlier today.
Yeah, we did.
Right.
We did, man.
We did.
That.
Yeah.
But Lieutenant Brown, why don't you introduce yourself and just kind of tell our viewers, tell us your story. I always ask people their story, and when I say story, like tell us about the police department, but tell us your story. Why are you here?
A brief story. It's in the military. Reductions in force kind of hit a lot of us, and I needed and wanted to do something outside of that was kind of close to what I did in the military. So here I am with the Mobile Police Department 29 years later.
Nice.
And I'm loving it. I haven't had a great time, had a great run. And
Still running.
He said a great run.
I had a great run. I have to walk now.
Time has come.
Well, you're walking with most of us.
Yeah, I had to walk now, but I had a great run. Law enforcement means a great deal to me because, I told the guys when I interviewed to come on the police department that I wanted to make a difference and help out. I know a lot of folks say that, but I meant it. And able to make some contributions. Can't fix everything, but I think I'm going to keep trying to do that. I'm trying to figure out what the problems are and guide my young people to kind of figure out what's going on and how to help people a whole lot better.
So sometimes we go into these things and we start and we kind of take light steps and I'm going straight for the hard questions, okay? Because I've been listening to you for a few minutes, and
what's the hard question?
and I'm when I listen, I'm listening for a reason.
All right.
What is your hard
So
question?
yesterday we had a conversation with a few folks, and one of the things we brought up was sort of the transgression that law enforcement itself has made, okay? And so you have this traditional law enforcement idea, we'll call it of years gone past, right? Which is the what and where the crime is. Like, okay, go sit there because there was a crime at First and Main Street, right? And so we put a car there.
Broken window.
And then we identify a map and we say, well, that's where our problem is, so we send resources there. And everything's about there and the what and the where. Then we kind of migrated into this intelligence-led policing model, which a lot of agencies are still pushing, right? And it asks the why. Well, why is that happening? And who's the one bad actor out of those 10? And if we get that one bad actor off the street, we can cut crime down by 60%. But Curtis and I are pushing past that, and we've really taken this additional approach, which we're using this holistic-led policing strategy. And my question to you is this. We have to move past the why and that one back. How do we stop the legacy of people that come behind that person so that not only we reduce crime, but we prevent it from ever happening? If you go back to the original core of law enforcement, it's not to arrest and apprehend, it's to prevent crime.
That's right.
So how do we use our enforcement? You're on the front lines, and we're gonna get to the reason you're here, which is a tremendous following you have on social media. But the reality of it is, the deep thinking question I have today is based on what I've heard you say. How do you use your story? How do you use your passion for what you do? So we stop those that come behind that and create a positive legacy, not a negative one.
Okay, take a breath.
That's a big breath.
Ron, go.
That's a huge question.
It is.
And my honest answer is it takes all of it. You got to have intelligence-led policing. And if you don't have that, you're not identifying the problem. And so in a nutshell, and we didn't have that when I came on the police department 29 years ago. We didn't have that at all, and it was the same pattern. We was repeating the pattern that went for decades. And so now, community-oriented policing, awesome concept, introducing officers back to the community. But you got to have officers that actually want to do this. If you just say, "Hey, you go there and knock on a door," that's zero input. It's going to get zero gain. So now we're doing the intelligence-led stuff, and then not only that, now we're communicating with people. And so you're always going to have them naysayers. You always, so you prepare yourself for that. This people will say it's not going to work. Dismiss that, put them out of mind, and start concentrating on the folks that are actually going to buy into it. And by buy into it, that means the police has to buy into it, as well as the community. And then, if you get those two things going together, now you can leave a legacy behind.
And let's talk about community for a second, because you're really big on Nextdoor, and you've been on it now since what, 2014,
2014.
right? So you've created a big following of people, not because you're the police on Nextdoor, but because you come across as this real person who is relatable, right?
Right.
And you talk about things that you've seen while you were out in the field for that shift, or maybe at some other point in time that bothered you enough to where you're like, hey, community, hey, people, my fellow citizens, what's going on here?
Right.
And they connect with you.
Yeah.
Take a breath. Let me
Okay, yeah.
I had no idea that the connection was there. What I wanted to do is, again, from a position of authority, it's easy to say, hey, lock your doors. Don't leave your keys in the car. Don't leave guns in the car. The water folks know that. We've been preaching that. So I wanted to try a different tact. I wanted to strip me down and look at it from the eyes of an ordinary citizen that don't have to wear a badge, that don't have to go out and patrol, and say, hey, I saw this, and this is what I want you to know. And I'm not going to influence you in it. This is what I see. I keep it bare bones, and I just put it right out there for them to see. This is what's going on. This is what you need to be aware of.
Well, listen, 29 years in, and is it fair to say that you've evolved? Were you that run? I would say that there were definitely pieces of that run back when, okay? But do you feel like you've evolved, and if so, how?
I'm a work in progress. I'll say that. I knew how I wanted to police when you and I joined the police academy. I knew after the fact how I wanted to police. And as time went on, I wanted to find better ways to do my job. And so, yes, I've evolved to the extent that I realized that I can't do my job without the public. I can't do my job without the community.
But law enforcement needs this legacy too, and what I'm hearing is you're using the word evolve, which is good, but really what we're doing is refining wisdom, right? And so what you thought you knew 29 years ago, could you honestly say that it's the exact same thing you know today?
Oh, absolutely not.
And you've shared those discerning moments with the troops that are following you around, the next generation of law enforcement.
Right, and they'll share it too, because if you stay stagnant, if you stay static, you're not gonna evolve. The only thing you're gonna do is keep repeating the same process. And we already know that if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, then it's insanity. So I think law enforcement has to be willing to come out and meet the people, meet them. I mean, it's not our way or the highway. Certainly not, because at the end of the day, the community has this final say so.
But how important is that, though, Ron, when you think about it? Because now more than ever, oftentimes, to be candid, officers don't always live in the immediate area in which they police, right?
Right.
And that in and of itself creates a void in relationship, because you're not at the ballpark with that person who lives in that neighborhood, or your kid does not attend the same school that person child attends.
True.
So how important is it for you to go the extra mile in trying to try to create a relationship, I guess, more than anything else, with that person or persons, so that you can kind of fill that void that is obviously there as we continue to see the I guess the migration of officers leaving law enforcement and having to find ways of attracting people from outside the area to come here and so on.
It's extremely important in that if you don't understand, first of all, why the problem is occurring. We know there's a problem. Obviously, we're called there, but I want to know why it's occurring. And if you don't ask the questions and if you don't make yourself relatable, you'll never get the answer.
Right.
So let's talk about relatable, because in the why. I mean, you went right back to the exact point we opened, which is you have to ask why. We got to stop going just to the what and where, and we got to say why. Otherwise, we're going to always be at the what and the where.
You're right.
So let me ask you this question. Go back in a time capsule for a minute. The first time you sent out something on Nextdoor and you tried it with your different approach, what was your reaction when you saw what the reaction was from the community?
I was like, wow.
So tell us about that.
Yeah,
What did that inspire you to do?
It made me think about, first, I think a lot about what I'm going to write before I write it, and I want to be true to it, or else I won't write at all. And so when I saw people saying, hey, you know, thank you, or they're commenting on it, I was like, wow, this is what they want to read. They don't want to just read a bunch of stuff that, you know, because my boss is sending them crime stats. And that's something that they want. People want to know what's going on, you know, in their neighborhoods and around them. So I'm certainly not going to regurgitate what he put. So I was like, well, what do I do? Mm-hmm. What do I write that's you know, that's unique to the community I'm serving, and tell them, you know, hey, here's what's going on, and here's more detail about what's going on, without violating anyone's rights, without saying, you know, expressing my own opinion about things. I just put it out there and put myself in the equation as a writer, and that's it.
Well, you know, obviously the community, when they respond, that's a clear indication that they really are appreciating the engagement, the interaction that you're creating with them. But what is the response that you're getting from fellow officers that see those posts?
I haven't gotten any response in that. I mean, but you got to think it's a lot of us that's posting. And so, you know, it's one of the things that, you know, we post on Nextdoor, but I don't see a lot of them is the reason why. I see my supervisor, and, you know, he'll tell me good job, and that's good enough for me, but I don't get a chance to interact with the rest of the guys.
Do you see an increase in people engaging in Nextdoor since 2014, since you've been on?
Yes.
In terms of officers?
In terms of officers, the primary post is the Nextdoor right now. Is shift commanders, shift commanders and precinct commanders.
Gotcha.
So patrolmen and patrol supervisors aren't posting.
Well, here's my question, and I'm not going to get political here, but we did use the word opinion, and so I'm a big believer in opinion. As a matter of fact, it's one of the few things that no matter where you live in the world, you have one. Yeah. Whether you're allowed to share it or not, that's the question.
That's the question.
And whether or not we want to attack somebody because they've shared it, that's the problem.
Right.
Right. So you and I don't have to agree, although we do. I'm one of your biggest fans in listening to what you're doing, because I believe this is how we get the message out. But let's just say we disagreed. We could still share our opinions and say, hey, I accept your opinion, and I hear it because now I know your story, right? And so my question, and to follow on to Curtis, is like listening about officers, whatever. I think we put people in this box and we say, because you're an officer, you can't share your opinion. Because you're in this position, you have to avoid these four corners, because if you stay away from these things, you might offend somebody. And granted, I don't want to offend somebody. We certainly don't want to violate rights.
Right.
But that may be part of the reason why we're in the predicament we're in right now, is because we've scared people into thinking that if they express what they're really seeing, that there's some ramification, when in fact the community wants to know what's really happening. And so we have to do what you're doing, which is, I believe, we have to be honest. Now, I'm not saying we call anybody out or we make fun of anybody, but by all means, that's not what we're doing. But if it really happened, why can't we really say that it happened? And why can't we really have that discussion? And without picking a side or opinion, everybody has their own opinion, but like, why can't we have that dialogue?
And you should be able to. And I think if you don't, it's a huge mistake. It's a huge error. And I feel like, you know, I've got a supervisor and I got an assistant chief, and I'm not saying there's things to make those guys, you know, to shine on those guys. What I'm just saying is that I've worked with them and for them before in the past, and I think they'll give me that latitude. I've always been one to just say whatever's up here is coming out, and I can't control that, but I know how to keep it simple, and I know how to put it out there. And you're absolutely right. If we restrain these young guys, these young officers from saying and speaking what's actually going on in the calls. Some of them, you know, you got to curtail it. Sure. You got to be smart about it. But yeah, you can put it out there.
I think the key is what you said earlier. It's about pausing long enough to make sure that that emotion is not dictating the response,
Right.
but a rational thought
Right.
to reason
Yeah.
and call for action
Right.
is the thing that's most important.
That's hugely important. It's important to me, and so when I write about what I've seen, I make sure I take myself out of the center of it, and because then if I don't do that, I'm influencing the people that's reading what I'm.
But this platform is a virtual way of community policing. This is no different than stopping at a store and talking over the counter.
One of the best ways. I tell you, I like the setup that I saw here. I like what you guys do. This is another way to get us out there, and we're catching up with it, and we're doing it, and I love it.
Well, it's another form of communicating when you don't live next door to the person or live in the community with them. You said something earlier before we started, and you were talking about your neighborhood and how sometimes people see the police and they're afraid to speak, right?
Yeah.
Because they see that car, they see you have this stern look, but so your neighbors are like, hey, I'm a little bit afraid to say hello, but you initiate the action.
Oh, yeah.
You wave, then they realize like, okay, he's cool,
Right.
and they wave back, and before you know it, there's this engagement that goes a step above that,
Right.
where, hey, I'm so and so. You know, we don't always have to do that. It's great when we do, especially in communities. But what we're talking about now is next door and using that technology to do those things where people get a chance to hear you speak about the things that concern them
Right.
and realize that you guys are more alike than you are different.
And that was my approach with Nextdoor. The same way we were discussing me waving. That was kind of me doing the same thing with Nextdoor and saying, "Hey, this is Ron Brown. This is the guy that just went to this call, and let me tell you about what I saw, person to person, me to you, instead of me being, Lieutenant Brown, and these are the things you should not do. Let me tell you what I saw, and you make your mind up from there. But let's just all agree that this is the problem."
Right. And I'm sorry.
No, I did.
Okay.
It's important because I get them very, very seldom, and so. But
really?
no, go ahead. You share yours first.
No, I'm thinking back about one of the comments you had about something that took place, and it had to do with shots being fired or something.
Yeah.
And you were very eloquent in your response, but I think that it resonated with so many people because you weren't trying to shame someone, but you were trying to make people realize, hey, parenting matters, right?
It does.
Okay, and how do you be okay with something that your children are doing that clearly is wrong, and getting on some social media platform and actually boasting about it?
Yeah. I saw that, and in fact, it wasn't the first time I saw that. And having to view officers' videos of a young man and another young man exchanged gunfire, and the mother actually, she cheered on her son. She thought that it was a nice thing for him to be doing. This is just a body footage, body worn camera footage, and then the next one I go on a call, and the neighbor calls in, and she's like, "Hey, these guys are shooting, and these other guys that they're shooting at are shooting back at them." So me and my guys, we get there, and I kind of stand off and let the guys do the work, and then I hear the mom saying, "Yeah, they did right. They went after him," and I was like, "Really? You don't care that someone just came to your house and shot at your children, and shot your cars and endangered your neighbors, and then your children, chased these guys down and shot back at them?" And I was like, what kind of world are we living in where a parent condones that? Forget about the little children, and there was a party going on at his house with a jump-a-thon and young people around, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is where we are, but this is not what we have to accept.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like, it's not by a lack of effort. And the reason I say it's not by a lack of effort is because we put forth all the effort that's required to build walls and barriers. We want to build a wall and a barrier, we're gonna put the effort for it. But when somebody comes to you and says, "I really need you to do the hard work," which is to tear down this barrier and actually to step into the role that you You assume, right, wrong, or indifferent, you assume this role. This is your role. You were parented, and now it's your turn to parent.
I agree.
Right? And so that's a hard conversation. People don't want to have that hard conversation, but you can tell them there's 1,000 bricks here. They'll build a 1,000 brick wall because it's easier to divide. It's easier to not face the issue than it is to face the issue. I believe if we have those hard conversations now, like you're having, then all of the subsequent conversations are easier, right? Because we're not having to tell somebody how to parent. We're talking about, okay, this happened. Where do we need to go from here?
Right.
And that, and maybe in just a way, your social conversations and your in-person conversations are actually helping people figure out what, and not shaming them, but calling out what the problem is. Maybe we can tear down some of these walls.
Well, I think, it's easy to point fingers, and I won't do that. What I like to do is find, like Curtis and I spoke earlier, find out the why. And what I found out there is there's a definite disconnect. We got a parent that thinks it's okay to condone what their children are doing, and that's a problem. And are all parents doing it? No. Are some of them doing it? Most definitely, particularly with gun violence. And I get it. That my children need to have these guns in order to protect themselves. It's a terrible mentality. It's a terrible seed that's been planted. When and then that thought process is wrong. We got to change that, and he's doing a great job at changing that. But now we're seeing that it's a core problem. More and more, gun violence, and more young people. Every time you look around, they're shooting themselves, and it's shooting each other. Why?
I think a lot of times we look at problems and we try to contain the problem without mitigating the problem.
That's right.
And ultimately with the desire to eradicate the problem. But to only contain the problem in and of itself only allows that problem to find its way out of that containment and go elsewhere and metastasize. Now you have pockets of it all over the place. So, you have literally 3 decades of law enforcement experience. What are you saying to your young officers today to try to give them pieces of wisdom, because they cannot absorb all that you have to give them at one time?
No.
Okay. So
what I'm telling them now is to think about it. You don't have to rush into every situation, because if you do, you're wrong. You're going to make mistakes. Assess the situation. They're taught that, but it really makes a lot of sense to think about what it is you're doing, look at the bigger picture, and then make a decision from there. You don't have all day to make a decision, but at least give yourself the time to think about what it is you have. Think about what the call is, who's calling in, what you're dealing with, and how you're going to approach it. That's where a lot of mistakes are made, is we rush in and we automatically assume that the person we're going to encounter is wrong.
So this is a great conversation, and I know we're slowly winding down here. So I want to throw two questions at you.
Okay.
One question, but for 2 different groups of audiences. And by the way, for our viewers, echostoplive@gmail.com is an email address we use where you can communicate with us directly. You can send a message to us. If you've got a message for the good lieutenant here, send it to us, and we'll definitely get it to him. If you've got ideas, suggestions, this isn't something we do to broadcast out. This is something we do to incite a conversation that you can come in and participate with us. But on that note, as we kind of close out here before I give Curtis the final word, what do you say to people who are listening and they're thinking about, maybe I do want to go into law enforcement. I'm not sure. I watch the news a lot. I see a lot of crazy things, but I'm thinking I want to do this. Like, I feel this calling inside of me, and I don't know what to do with it. And what do you say to the community member who's not thinking about going into law enforcement but wants to stand up and do something in their community? What do you say to those 2 groups of individuals?
It's a wonderful job. It really is. Television and the media make it seem that we're the bad guys. We're not. We're ordinary people. We're the people that you put your trust in to come here and do the job. It's very rewarding. I've had an extremely good time throughout the years, and I'm still having a good time. I still feel it. I still want to get out there and do it. And for the person that's got doubts about it, don't. Just come here and try it. For the person that's in the community that's on the fence, you don't know till you get in the car with us and see what it is we do. And it ain't all of the fear that's involved that you're seeing, and with us getting shot at and all this. That's few and far between. What it is serving the community. What it is making a difference. And everybody can make a difference.
Everybody can make a difference. I like the way you said that.
That's good.
That comes back to truly it takes all of us, and everybody has a role in making us bigger and better. Kurt, I'm going to let you have the final thought on today's conversation as we roll this one out.
Well, I don't have a lot to say other than Ron. I will tell you 3 decades, man.
Yeah.
And in those 3 decades, clearly you did not do the last decade or the second decade the way that you started doing it.
No.
So if you are doing anything the same way that you were doing it 20 years ago, then you've missed it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You've missed it.
I missed it.
You didn't miss it. You didn't miss it.
No.
But that person who actually is still doing it the same way and not trying to adapt new ideas, new thoughts,
Yeah.
They're missing it.
they're missing it.
Yeah, they're lost.
Yeah.
You got to grow with it.
Yeah.
Well, growth is important, and I'll tell you what, I've been really excited at not only our conversation here, but we've talked to several officers. We've had many conversations along the way, and not met one on this department that I've dealt with, and on the many departments that we deal with, even in our other outside roles in the department, that's let me down to think, oh gosh, we missed it here. I think what happens is when we lump everybody into one category and we say this is the group,
Right.
we lose the individual. But you're an individual and you have a story, and there's many like it, and we're just blessed. I've said all along, like, the greatest thing that I have is God's put me here, and I don't really have to do anything other than just cherish the opportunity of the blessings, which are the people. And so I get them the stuff they need. I help them do their job. I listen to the views that they have, and this is what you do for your troops, the next generation. We have to find the people to bring here who are spirit-led, who are going to replace us. And we have to be comfortable with being replaced by those people.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting part about what we are in our profession, I think, all of
You
us.
didn't give me the last word. I want to have the last word.
Well,
Can I have the last word now?
Actually, I have it written down on an index card. I was going to hold it
You
up.
didn't give me the last word. Ron, look, man, I will tell you that you have been a guy that has stood in the gap in law enforcement for 30 years, okay? And my hope is that those who have come to know you in those 30 years that have trained under you actually have taken just a little bit of what you've had to share with them.
I think they have. Most of them are actually section commanders now. So I did my job. I
Very
told
good.
those guys a while back that I'm training my replacement. And they'll tell you that I told them that. And the idea there was for them to, outdo me. And I've succeeded in that.
Well, you've been making a difference, and you continue to make a difference. So, yeah.
Well, we thank you for being here, Kurt. Thank you for the final word.
As always.
And we will sign out until we see you next week at our Echo Stop Live podcast. We're so grateful that you've chosen to take this journey with us. Can't wait to see you, and I hope you're excited about to see where we are. And we'll see you then. Take care and be safe until then.